We do.
Okay, so I will start. Thank you very much. So I started from where Ragi stopped at the end of his concept note, trying to catch some of the aspects I think are important for the research agenda in the region. So the introduction is the standard one, the youth bulge, the weak demand for skills. I will focus on demand because I think in the region we focused a lot on supply issues. Maybe it's time now to look more at demand. This is the same like Islam said earlier and a little bit also Ashab. So as Saraki said, unemployment is not enough, and I will focus on over-education here and how it can create frustration, rebellion, etc. And the work on school-to-work transitions. So the 4 papers, I'm not presenting a paper, I'm trying to present some ideas of research agenda. And the 4 papers I'm taking some ideas from are one on Ukraine, and I like it a lot because it's a paper from Olga Kupets, and it tackles at the same time sectoral analysis and education analysis. So really the economy and the demand for skills. The second is our work, it's an ERF paper on structural change, skills, and so it's a long-run paper, we did on Tunisia and Turkey with co-authors on 60 years. Work in progress on our education with Mamdar Lassasi, who is in the room and who can comment later. And something very new, we are starting in collaboration with WIDER and with the colleague of ENS, who are present there and on using labor force survey. So to start with, the first question is what are really the main source of weak demand for educated labor in the region? Is it more an issue of expansion of less knowledge-intensive activities or an absence of skill-based technical change that we see in developed countries? The second question is about job polarization. Is it explained by routine-based technological change that we see also mainly in developed countries, or other explanation like deindustrialization, trade, migration, many other points? So for Ukraine, for example, Olga Kupets explains that it's absolutely not RBTC, and it's more deindustrialization and other aspects. So to move forward and try to be as quick as possible, here are some ways to measure these concepts. So the first is to analyze the sectoral shifts. And to analyze the sectoral shifts, I think we need to move more than study just the sectors and try to group them in terms of technology. So we have some classifications, like the one used by Eurostat, where you have low-tech sectors, low to mid-tech, mid to high, etc. And for services, it's more in terms of knowledge, while for manufacturing, it's more in terms of technology. Then we can decompose, and it's important, and Ragi talked about it, and this is what we are starting to do, decompose the shift of occupational shares. So for the paper on Tunisia and Turkey, we did it by education demand, because for 60 years, we didn't have the occupations in detail. While for the current new project with WIDER, we are more looking at occupational structure in detail using ISCO classification and starting to tackle the task issue with the possibility of computing, of course, routine task intensity index, as I will show here. So the task intensity is, you have the 5-4 of Otto and Dorn, and then they aggregate them in 3. And you see that in general, it's in the middle, mainly that you have the routine, not in the highest level, where it's more abstract. And in the manual, you have also less of this routine tests. So to show a little bit, it's hard to do this very quickly, but the comparison of Tunisia and Turkey, when you look at the demand of education between sector versus within sectors, we see here that, for example, in the first period from the 60s to the 70s, it was more a within story. So the whole economy was upgrading, while from the 70s to the 90s, it was much more a structural change story, and especially agriculture was losing ground. So this is why we had more an increase of skill demand. For the analysis, we are using the ISCO occupations. So we have the 9 categories, and then the 9 categories are aggregated in 4 categories. We are using this also in the paper on overeducation. And here, for example, you can see for Tunisia, in the paper on where we see the evolution of the 4 categories. You see that, for example, from the revolution of 2011, the share of the highest skill category decreased by almost 10% in Tunisia. So we have an effect of decrease of skills, which has to be analyzed. We're still at the beginning of the analysis. So the new research project that we really started very recently with wider and shifts, then try to understand if there are other determinants such as institutional setting or any others. So we look at the temporal variation of earning distribution among different skill levels at the finest level possible. And we look, for example, if it's mainly changes in skills or it's in task content of jobs. So we try to go deeper. And of course, we look at the heterogeneous effect by region. For example, we know that in the disadvantaged region, it's different in Tunisia than in the coasts, by age, by etc. So you can look at this in a very fine way. The second part of the presentation, which is very short, is about overeducation. So as I said, we are working on this. And the idea here is to look at this mismatch. And of course, it's very much linked to the weak demand for educated labor in the region. The mismatch can be quantitative or qualitative, and it can be skill or education mismatch. And also in some cases, we have an unobserved ability that is, people consider it as mismatch, but it is not. It's actually people who have the diploma but don't have the skill. So we have to also try to disentangle or to know exactly what is the case we're analyzing. We then study the determinants. We're interested in studying the determinants. Why people choose an unmatched job or can stay in unemployment. Of course, it depends on their social condition. There are the micro determinants such as age, gender, etc. And then we see the impact. The impact, of course, on labor market usual outcomes, but also on work satisfaction, life satisfaction, migration. So how people behave when they are in this situation of education. So I will not enter in the methodology, just to say that it can be, of course, the micro part, and there is the macro part, which is linked to structural change. And this is why I'm talking here. I think the structural transformation issue can have multiple effects. And personally, I've been working on it for years, and I think we need to link these aspects of structural transformation, others that were talked about, like cronyism, industrial policy, and what's happening at the micro level, including at the very finest level of skills by classification, by routine versus non-routine, etc., so that we understand better what is happening in the region. And thank you.